Hello fellow cinephiles, Film Guru here. Today I'm reviewing The Girl in the Spiderweb. This was directed by Fede Alvarez, who was known for Don't Breathe and the Evil Dead remake. And it stars Claire Foy, Stephen Merchant, Sylvia Hoeks, I think her name is, she's a new actress I haven't seen a lot of, and Lisbeth Salander. It's a continuation story of Lisbeth Salander. It really looks at her taking on jobs once again, as the hacker she is, and she takes on one particular job that goes quite bad and she has to work out what's going on with the help of Mikkel. They ultimately find themselves caught up in the web of spies, cyber criminals and corrupt government officials. And it's a race against time for them to work out what's going on and stop it from happening. And this all leads to quite a shocking, surprising ending, with a lot of twists and turns along the way. Look, I thought this was a solid film. I think that Alvarez has done some really great films. I really enjoyed the Evil Dead remake. I thought that was really, really well done and one of the best I've seen, remake-wise. And I really like Don't Breathe. He has this great ability of creating good tension, suspense within single locations in those two films. This film really opens up his world a bit more, I guess, as director. It's not set in a single location, there's a variety of locations, and it's very ambitious what he's trying to do here. He's trying to do something different and entertaining, and I think he does a solid job here. I think it's quite an interesting film and well done. Now, this is the third incarnation of Lisbeth Salander. Now, it's not following the same Stieg Larsson books, the trilogy that came before it. This is a whole new lot of books that have been written and published. Because originally Stieg Larsson wanted to do not just a trilogy with these characters, but he wanted to do a number of books, about 12 I think I read. And obviously he was only able to do the 3 before he passed away. So I think this is them trying to continue on what he was going to do. And I think they do an okay job here. The big standout for me is Claire Foy. I think she's a really, really talented actress and she's really making a name for herself. After she played the Queen in The Crown, she started to get a variety of different roles. First Man's another one. She's also, you know, obviously Girl in the Spiderweb. And I think she does a really solid job playing this character, and it's the best thing I think about the film. And she has moments to shine, you know, is able to show the awkwardness Lisbeth feels with people and isn't really good interacting with others or conversing, and the struggle that she does find within and the conflict that she has with herself and others and situations that she finds her in. This sort of looks a little bit at her past, which I thought was kind of interesting, but it does sort of, to me, change what Stieg Larsson created in the original books and in the original films. So they've sort of gone in a little different direction. But it's still a solid and entertaining film with great performances. And the guy that got playing Mikkel, he does a solid sort of job. I still think the best incarnation of that particular character was Daniel Craig. I think in the American version he was better, I felt, than the original guy they had in the original lot of Swedish films, and I think he does a better job than this particular character in this film, because this character just seems a bit, doesn't seem tough enough or, you know, resilient enough for this particular character, and I think he really needs that as his character. I think Stephen Merchant does a solid job as like a designer, a computer and program designer, and I think he's very solid here in his performance. And it's good to see him doing a bit more dramatic stuff rather than being just known for his comedy. And I think he really shined in this, and Logan was another performance he did, was a bit more dramatic, and I think he was fantastic in it as well. Lakers Stanfield, I think, does a solid job as well. He's an actor who's sort of making a name for himself, especially with things like Get Out and Atlanta. He's really sort of shining through and appearing in a lot of films, and I think he's really solid here. I think everybody does a really great job. I like the look of the film. I like the decisions made with choices of shots and what was in the shots and the colours they used and the locations and variety of things, and I think that worked really well. I really liked coming back into the world. I really liked the Lisbeth character, and I really wanted to see more of her, and it was good in a way to be back in that sort of world. Even though it couldn't be dark and scary at times, I think she's such a fascinating character that I really like to see more of her in this world, and they really do focus on her more in this film than they do any of the other characters, because it's really her sort of story. They have Sylvia Hoeks, who I think is plays a really great villain in this, and she does a really solid job, and I really like to see more of her as well. I did like this film, but I do have some criticisms about it. There's some things I didn't think worked and things I didn't quite like. This really felt like it was an unused James Bond script. It had the same sort of tropes and the same sort of storylines and things that his sort of films have. You know, obviously swap out James Bond for Lisbeth Salander, but it sort of has, you know, an interesting sort of villain. There's a bit of stuff from his backstory. It's actiony, there's twists and turns. She's sort of like a James Bond sort of spy character, I think, in a way. And she also feels a bit like the Punisher this time around. And I felt that Alvarez was really trying to, I don't know, maybe he's interested in doing a Bond film, I'm not sure, because this just felt like his audition for it, because it hits the same things that the Bond films do, the villains, the gadgets and technology and stuff, and I think it could have worked as a Bond film actually in a way. And I think that's what it felt like, that's what he was really going for here. There isn't a lot of depth to the characters. If you know Lisbeth and Michael from the books and the previous films, then you may understand them and get their character, and you don't need any more character development to them because you know who they are. But for people who haven't and are coming in just for this film, I just felt there could have been a bit more depth and a bit more showing who these two people were and the experiences that they did have. I read in the book that it was really about Michael's character doing a story on something Elizabeth Salander was involved in, but the film didn't really go into that, I didn't feel. It changed direction for how Lisbeth got involved in the whole thing, and what transpired I think was a little different in what I read of the book. It just felt like it was missing something. The original Swedish films with Noomi Rapace and the American remake, which I didn't mind, with Rooney Mara, I think there's a sort of a bleakness, a darkness, an unsettlingness to these sort of films that you can just feel just under the surface. And I felt that really worked for this sort of world and these sort of characters. But I felt with this film it didn't really have that. It felt like it was missing something like that, a darkness or something about it just didn't quite work. It felt like he was trying to reach a wider market and a wider audience. Rather than making it similar to the other films, he wanted them a bit more accessible for audiences. But I think the other films did really well in the box office and people really enjoyed them, so I don't know why he didn't go down that track with this film. And especially with his previous two films, like Evil Dead and Don't Breathe, there's a darkness to those films. There's an unsettlingness. There's a lot of tension, suspense in those two films, and I don't know why he didn't bring that to this sort of movie. I think it's missing that sort of element. And a lot of motivations for the characters sometimes don't make sense. And like I said, there isn't a lot of development to the characters. You don't get a real sense of who they are, except for the characters that you do know. This is the third incarnation of Lisbeth Salander, and I think, like I said, Claire Foy does a really solid job. But I do think Noomi Rapace is the best Lisbeth. I just liked, maybe because she was the first incarnation I saw, I just liked what she did in it. I liked that she was sort of fit, and the way she played the character, you really got a sense of the dread inside of her and the conflict and who she was as a person, and you could really sense the past and the things she'd been through. And with the American remake that David Fincher did, some people call unneeded, I think Rooney Mara did a really solid job in that as well, playing the character very similar to Noomi Rapace, but adding a little differentness to it and a few more layers. And Claire Foy does a really solid job, but I just don't think they get the character quite as right as they did in the previous two incarnations of it. And I'd like to see what Claire Foy does next, because I think she's a really solid actress and up-and-comer, and I think one day she will ultimately win an Oscar for her performances, because I think she's a really, really good actress. Anyway, final verdict. Look, if you like a good solid action flick, good mystery with twists and turns along the way, a good way to spend 2 hours, you may enjoy this. If you like the Bond films, you may see a similarity between this and the Bond films, then you might enjoy this as well. If you're a fan of Claire Foy or even the director, you may get a lot out of it as well. I don't know if it's going to be for everyone, and people who are fans of the previous incarnations of the character and the stories and the books may not enjoy this as much, but I think it's a really good solid installment of this sort of thing. I think what they should really do is maybe go down, if they're going to do more of these films, maybe go down more the TV series path, like, and make it a bit like Mr. Robot or Mindhunters or something like that, and just do something different. And I think this could really work in that regard. I ummed and ahed about the score that I wanted to give this film. Decided to give it 3.5 out of 5. It's above average. It could have been a lot better in certain aspects, and like I said, I enjoyed it, but I was a little disappointed, and there was a few criticisms that I had that they could have worked on and made the film a lot better. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy the videos that I'm making, and if you are, please hit subscribe down the bottom. Anyway, as usual, thanks for watching. Until next time, enjoy the movies.